You're an agribusiness executive navigating an increasingly competitive market while trying to grow your company. Mergers and acquisitions are pitched as an accelerant to growth, but many M&A deals destroy more value than they create. Welcome to the Pacesetter Pod, where we explore and reveal the perspectives, insights, and approaches for successful mergers and acquisitions. Here's your host, the Integration Pacesetter, Joe Mosier.
Hello and welcome to the only show on the internet dedicated to helping the leaders of small to middle market food and agribusinesses deliver great results through better strategy execution. This is the Pacesetter Pod, and I am your host, Joe Mosier. I've got a question for you, listener, today. How often, or maybe how recently, have you been sitting in a meeting, or maybe a project gate review, or sitting with members of the board reviewing an investment strategy, and realized that in your debate of what is the right approach, what is the right investment level, what is the right scope, what's the right timing, etc., how many of you sat and realized, oh, we're not actually aligned around what we're trying to accomplish and why we're doing it? For me, it happens more often than I'd like to admit. And I'd like to admit that I can go into any room and I can either quickly define the why of what we're working on or guarantee that I never get ahead of myself and I always ask the question first, what are we trying to accomplish? What's the why of this challenge? But the reality is that we're all human. We all make mistakes, we all have omissions, and we all get ahead of ourselves in the excitement of meeting a competitive threat, taking on a new challenge, entering a new market, whatever it is. And this has happened to me recently. So sitting with the client, core members of their leadership team, and they're working through a pretty gnarly challenge of how to respond to a competitive threat. So they've done several M&A deals over the last couple of years, and they're now looking at one of their bigger competitors and probably one of their more competent competitors, not just doing deals and getting bigger in select geographies and select product lines, but also getting better in the way they go about their business. And so we're sitting there and we're debating tactics. We're debating the relative merits of options A, B, and C, what the appropriate investment levels might be, what kind of response you would expect. But I realized that as we got further and further down the path, we were less and less rooted and anchored in actually what is it we're trying to accomplish. And so I think this is a reminder to me, and a reminder to all of us, that the power of questions can have an outsized impact on your business. And so today, I want to dig in and reframe and follow up on the 3 questions that I see that can change a business from a strategic perspective. 3 questions that can not only improve your execution on what you're trying to accomplish, but also make sure that you cut through the noise and stop spending time on things that you shouldn't be doing, and also helping make explicit decisions around what we're going to do and what we're not going to do, and doing it in a way that creates the alignment and the credibility and the cohesion at all levels of the organization so that you can get to work and get to growing. So again, today, we're going to dig into 3 questions that can change the growth trajectory of your business. Let's dig in. The first question that you want to ask, and you want to make sure this is clear in every strategic initiative, every growth discussion, every strategy outlook, whatever it might be, the question is, what problem are we trying to solve? And now this is not a novel idea, but just because something's been said before doesn't mean we shouldn't say it again. And I would say if any of you have not read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, you should pause this podcast now, go buy that book, or go watch the TED Talk on YouTube and come back. Defining what problem you're trying to solve is the same as defining the why. Why are we working on this? Why do we care? And so this is where we start. And the power of the question of what problem are we trying to solve is impactful and it's immediate. The benefits of focus are immediate. And I'll tell you what, the question of what problem are we trying to solve, it focuses the mind. And think about it within the context of an M&A deal. You're presented with an opportunity to buy a competitor, buy a business in an adjacent segment of your supply chain, buy a customer, buy a supplier, whatever it might be. We too often start to debate the relative merits of the deal without stopping to say, okay, what problem does this solve for us? What problem does this solve for our customers? What problem does this solve for our shareholders and stakeholders? The same thing is true in the context of restructuring of an organization. And this is also a relatively recent experience I had. I have a client who has a new CEO coming on board later this year. And as part of the onboarding, that inbound CEO and myself were sitting down reviewing some work that's been done around the company's operating model and their organizational structure. So how they're going to operate, how they're going to make decisions, what are the things that they value in the way that they run the business, and then what's the right organizational structure to reflect that, to enable that. And the underlying strategy of the business wasn't in place, meaning what are we trying to accomplish as an organization over the next 5 years? And as soon as that reality became crystal clear through that inbound CEO asking the question, what's the strategy here? What's the problem that this restructuring solves? The work ground to a halt. And not because the work isn't the right work to be doing, but it revealed the fact that we were ahead of ourselves. At some point earlier on, I imagine we all had alignment around what problem we're trying to solve. But as the months go on, and as the work mounts, and as the progress accrues, you stop reminding yourself. And if you stop reminding yourself of what problem you're trying to solve, how do you know that you're designing something that's actually going to solve the problem? The same thing can be true in development of a new product or a new service. You start with this novel idea. Our competitor offers XYZ product or service to our customers. We're going to meet them in the marketplace. We're going to meet it. We're going to beat it. We're going to be better than they are, cheaper than they are, faster than they are, more reliable than they are, whatever it might be. And then as the weeks and the months and the quarters go on, and the investments and efforts pile up, and you get closer and closer to launch, if you haven't stayed rooted in what problem are you solving, how do you know that you're going to do anything that's going to solve the problem at all? So that's the first question, a very unoriginal, but nonetheless impactful question. What problem are we trying to solve? Once you've got clarity around that, that takes us to question number 2. What is the value of solving it?
Poorly executed mergers and acquisitions destroy more value than they create. They can set your company back years. To defend your firm's position in the marketplace, you need access to the leading practices that unlock the greater potential of your people, processes, and systems. If you are undertaking a company transformation or pursuing an acquisition as a vehicle to grow, set up a call with Joe by visiting www.moshercg.com.
Now, this might seem obvious, but when you go back and talk about the problem, in most cases, people don't articulate the value of solving that problem and articulating the problem itself. And so at this stage in the process, we're talking all about the upside. What is it that this solution, this problem being solved, makes possible that wasn't possible before? Now, a couple of things about this question. Conveniently, one, you can't really articulate the value of solving that problem if you haven't done question number 1, which is defining the problem. So if you haven't done number 1, you're not going to be able to do number 2. That's good. That's a fail-safe. You're going to stop and have to go back to the beginning. But when you think about what is the value of solving it, there's a couple of additional things you need to think about. How will you know explicitly that the problem was solved? And this is where measurement comes in. So will you know that the problem is solved by revenue that you realize, by margin improvement, by maybe an increase in volume output or volume shipped, efficiency in how you run your facilities, maybe a reduction in headcount, whatever the value of solving that problem is, how do you plan to know and to be able to say definitively that the problem was solved? Secondarily, how will your customers know that the problem was solved? And this can be a bit of an intellectual heavy lift here, because a lot of times we're actually solving problems that, yes, create market value, but maybe it's a threat or a challenge that's only felt within the 4 walls of your business. But whether it's a competitor that's delivering a better product or service to the marketplace you're trying to compete with, whether it's an unmet territory, an underserved territory you're trying to get into, whatever the particular challenge is, it is powerful to define how you know it's going to be solved within the 4 walls of your business. But if you can then do the additional work of saying, okay, and how do our customers know? That's going to help you really sharpen your pencil, not just to be able to put those metrics in place and articulate the benefit to your customers, but then reinforce the why. Because it's a very compelling argument when you can say, Here's what we're trying to do. Here's what we gain from doing it, and here's what the market gains from us doing it. That kind of clarity is emboldening, it's energizing, it's motivating, and it creates a momentum and inertia that's hard to stop if it's done right. It'll also weed out the weaker ideas. So again, question 1, what problem are you trying to solve? Question 2, what's the value of solving it? And underneath that, how do you and your customers know it's going to be solved? And then this brings us to the third and final question. And this is sort of taking the contrarian view. What does this cost us if we don't solve it? So if you think about it, in the front end of the process, we've gotten crystal clear on what we're trying to accomplish. We've really doubled up by saying, and here's the value we expect. So at this point, you're getting pretty excited about your solution, your idea. And that's normal. That's healthy. That's a good moment of unification for the business. But now we need to take a step back, look at it from a different angle and say, okay, if we don't do this, what does it cost us? And there's a couple of things we need to know about this. One, this can be the hardest part of the process because you need to really steelman the opposition's argument. You need to take the best and most compelling opposition arguments into consideration. So this isn't simply giving it a passing effort of saying, okay, here's the things that could probably go wrong. Maybe here's why we shouldn't do it and sort of going through the motions. No, you want to actually put yourself in the position of somebody who's opposed to this investment, to this effort, to this strategy, whatever it might be, this M&A deal, and then steelman that argument. What is the best and most valid and compelling angles through which they're going to poke holes in your business case? And then play those out. Really challenge it. Put your own idea on trial for its life, which is not easy, but man, is it impactful when you do it right. It's going to help you test all of your assumptions. It's going to help you test and evaluate all of your beliefs. And at the end of it, it's going to whittle down your idea from what you believe to be true to what you know to be true. And so here's how we go about it when we're trying to articulate what might it cost us not to solve this particular problem. We do 3 things. First is, what do we at the outset, what do we know will happen if we fail or do nothing? And again, let's think about this in the context of acquiring a competitor that's come up for sale. What do you know is going to happen if you don't buy them? Now, what do you think could happen? What do you know? And once you've established that, the certainties, what do you believe will happen? What's the most likely outcome? And this is not giving in to your inner Chicken Little and thinking of the worst possible scenarios. It's like, okay, here's a reasonable thing. Somebody else is going to buy them. And them being acquired by XYZ competition, here's what it might mean for our business. Here's what it might mean for our customers. Here's what it might mean for production capacity within the geographies that we operate. Whatever particular leg of the egg supply chain your business is in. So once you've gone through what you know would happen and what you believe is most likely to happen, then spend a couple of minutes talking about what do you fear is the worst thing that may remotely happen. What's the worst possible outcome? It might be remote, might be unlikely, but what's the worst possible outcome? Get that on the table. Determine the probability. Is it very unlikely, somewhat unlikely, frankly, more likely than we'd like to admit, whatever it is. And take all these different perspectives and wrap them together. And at that point, you should have a pretty good sense of what is it going to cost you if you do nothing. Because all of that, having steelman the argument, having taken these different scenarios and probabilities and severities, and come together as a group, just like you had a good idea, you had a good clarification on what you're trying to solve, and you got great alignment on what it allows you to do, what's the value of solving it. Now you've got, okay, what's it likely to cost us if we do nothing? And then the math gets pretty simple, guys. So suddenly now the inertia to chase every good idea, it's kind of been put to the test. And there's no magical equation at this point, but you should know as a group whether this idea is still worth pursuing. If it's worth the investment of whether it's capital or effort or time, whatever it is, to get it done. And then the final thing you also want to be thinking about at the same time is, okay, gut check. When we do this, what does it not allow us to do? And this is the trade-offs that are inherent in every strategic effort. By saying yes to this, what do we need to say no to, at least for right now? And when you've done that, when you've answered these questions, not only will you have made much better decisions, you will have achieved a level of leadership alignment, clarity of focus, conviction in the value, all of these things coming together, it'll be a greater sense of alignment than you probably have had in a very, very long time. And the beautiful thing is, it's not just alignment created out of excitement of a big idea. It's excitement of that big idea, but rooted in a pragmatic and rigorous evaluation of the likely outcomes. How you're going to know if you are winning. How do you know if you're losing? What have you explicitly said? Yes, we know because we're doing A, we're not going to do B, at least right now. And that kind of clarity of focus and that kind of alignment is energizing to the greater organization. And I fully expect that you'll see a higher level of efficiency of execution, a much higher probability and hit rate of success, and a much greater upside in the actual results that have been delivered. So let me just recap again briefly today. The 3 questions you want to be asking: what problem are we trying to solve? What is the value of solving that problem? And what does it cost us if we don't solve that problem? I hope that's helpful. I trust that it is. And we've got a simple 1-page worksheet that we'd love to share with anybody who would like to use this in the work they're doing. All you have to do is reach out. You can find us on the website, mosercg.com. Send us a note, set up a call. We'd love to share that with you and help you forward in these critical moments. So thank you as always for tuning in today to the Pacesetter Pod. As always, please share this episode with others that you think could find value in the content. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. And as always, if you need to get in touch with me, Joe Mosier, you can do that by reaching out on LinkedIn. Or of course, as I said earlier, you can find me on our website, www.mosercg.com. Thanks for listening today, and have a safe day.
This is the podcastfactory.com.